there is a singular reason I can think of why this movie flopped. This singular reason spread across all the other factors, and that is perception. Welcome to today's podcast. Today we'll be looking at James Gunn's Supergirl, why and how it flopped, and all the lessons that you as a business person, an entrepreneur, an individual building his personal brand, all the lessons that you could learn from it. So let's dive in. So yes, it's been a couple of weeks since James Gunn's Supergirl hits the cinema, and right now it's confirmed it's a flop. It's failed abysmally. Let's look at the figures. First, we have the production budget is put at $170 million. The marketing was reported to be at roughly $120 million, although Warner also benefited from more than $100 million in promotional partner media value, which isn't the same as cash spent. Well, the opening weekend, Supergirl earned just $37.1 million domestic and $68 million worldwide. This is quite poor because expectations for performance domestically was put at roughly $50 to $55 million. It fell short of about $11 to $13 million. Right now, worldwide, the film has grossed about between $104 to $109 million, roughly $109 million. Week by week, we see interest in the movie going down. So the hope that the movie will make any money is already off the window. Yes. Altogether, the film has to make between 300 to 350 million worldwide to break even, and right now it has not even made half of that. So confirmed, Supergirl flopped. That is the data we have, and a lot of speculations. 100,000 videos on YouTube has tried to dissect and explain why. Many experts, so-called experts, have tried to pin the failure to one or two things. Of course, it's usual. Everybody's having a field day with it, except James Gunn. These numbers would make finance department suddenly rediscover religion. This isn't what I believe they hoped to get. So we would look at the entirety of why it failed, how it failed, and extract some lessons from it. Now, this is not a movie review, it's a branding lesson, but it will be interesting, very interesting. So once again, we are left asking the same question everyone keeps asking whenever any of these superhero movie flops: what went wrong? And you think after spending hundreds of millions of dollars, somebody would have budgeted at least maybe £20 for common sense. That is the finality of everything. Because somehow, if you zoom out and you look at the entire journey of the movie before it hit the cinemas, and after, especially before it hit the cinema, you would see that so many things could have been done right, at least to maybe turn the tide towards more positive ends. Anyway, first and foremost, I would start off by saying that there is a singular reason I can think of why this movie flopped. Now, I have said that you cannot point to just one thing. However, this singular reason spread across all the other factors, and that is perception, brand perception. So whenever a superhero movie struggles, everyone immediately reacts for the usual explanation: superhero fatigue. Now, I don't buy superhero fatigue, because if not, why did James Gunn's Superman perform significantly better? And why is anticipation for future Marvel films still incredibly high? Spider-Man would be out in a couple of months, I think, and the anticipation is high. I know Spider-Man would not flop. I know that for sure. Now, the truth is, people aren't tired of superheroes. They are tired of superhero films they don't want to watch. It's that simple. Saying this flopped because of superhero fatigue is like saying people stop eating at a restaurant because they are tired on the food. That's not why. People don't stop eating at a restaurant because they are tired of the food. People stop eating at a restaurant once the food starts getting bad. It's that easy. But there's the second explanation, the more common one, which is competition. Yeah, competition seems like a very great thing to dump the um, excuse on. But of course, this is not going to be the first time multiple movies hit the cinemas at the same time. No. And so blaming competition for every failure is a bit like blaming traffic because your restaurant serves good food. It does not make any sense. The traffic didn't cook the steak. So these explanations do not. So let's go back to the singular reason why I believe this film flopped and where you as a business person should learn. It's perception. I mentioned it before, the power of perception. So what's perception? How does it work? See, this is where branding becomes fascinating. See, every movie, in this case movie, Supergirl, every product, every business, every individual exists twice. Once on the screen and once in the audience's mind. So every single thing that you relate with, everything you can call a brand, your phone, the iPhone, your best drink, your best soda, your best watch, the influencers that you follow, all of these individuals, they exist twice. They exist as they come and as you interact with them, and they exist secondly in your mind. But guess where they have much leverage? In the mind, how you perceive them. The extent to which and the level at which you perceive a thing will determine to a large extent how you relate with it as it exists. So people already had opinions long before Supergirl reached cinemas, and most of those opinions, sadly, were largely negative. Some were excited. I was excited when I first saw the trailer. I was quite excited. I love the actress. First time seeing her, I don't think I've seen her in any other movie. Perhaps I have and I could not recognize her. I know she's predominantly dark-haired, except I'm wrong, and that they dyed it white. The point is, I never had any issues with the movie, but that's just me. When I saw the trailer, I loved where the story was going, but that's just me. A large percentage of influencers and YouTubers and Redditors and entire netizens had issues with it. And whether those opinions were fair is not the point, because perception changes behavior and markets don't respond to your intentions. Whatever reason Warner Bros. Had for creating that product, how they created it, whatever reason, whatever creative directive the director had, or James Gunn, as I think the producer also had, it really didn't matter. The intention didn't matter. It was always about how the market perceived it, and the response to what they believe. Simple. Israel has demonstrated this repeatedly. Entire wars have started because of perception. True. Entire companies have collapsed because of perception. Politicians have built careers almost entirely on perception. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but it's just the reality. Before the movie released, the fact is, one conversation surrounding the film was this so-called woke storytelling in Hollywood. And now, let's be clear, this is not the only reason. Of course, it cannot be, but perception. People already perceived it in that manner. And the conversations existed. James Gunn is not living in Mars. Warner Bros, their entire board, they are not living in Pluto. They knew these conversations existed. They knew people were talking about this. Podcasters, Redditors, I've mentioned all these guys, they were talking about it, yet nothing was really done to manage that conversation. It would seem as though it was more or less like a fight. Call it a fight because the best they could do was to either ignore or attack right back. And you can see what they got with it. To seem as though big brands often forget that no matter how big you are, the force of commerce would always be determined by the markets, by demand. You better respect your clients. But they don't know, they don't care. A second reason after the entire woke thing was the conversation around the lead character. Some viewers felt disconnected from the way she was presented. I didn't somewhere. Others referenced comments made by her during interviews, which leads back to this entire woke thing. Personally, I don't believe every female character has to exist for the so-called male gaze. Again, if it's just my thing, I think she's beautiful. That's me. Strong female characters have existed for decades. We have Ripley, we have Sarah Connor, we have Wonder Woman, and everything. And many are built to, appeal to the male gaze. It's all about the sexuality. However, we all know where Hollywood stands down with sexuality and how this leads tend to be the right word is how they tend to be presented as a leverage to teach something. So I did see one of those interviews where she was asked questions about a particular group of amazing individuals, might I say so, and her response sort of angered a lot of people. Again, that is the reality of things. Could it have been managed properly? Yes, of course. Many movies have been out. There is absolutely nothing wrong with presenting characters purely for how most people view sexuality. I don't think so. And right now in Hollywood, it would seem as though things are sort of rough and hot, and these arguments around sexuality can actually ruin any brand. In this case, Supergirl, was there a need for such conversations to be held? I don't think so, personally. But she responded, among other things, and of course, you would have half the internet mad at you. So there we go again. Perception. This is where it gets beautiful, or rather, wicked. You have the perception before you actually interact with the product. In this case, you've seen the trailer, you've the lead actress, you've heard her talk, you've listened to James Gunn, and netizen, the audience, already built a perception about the product, now about Supergirl. But I don't think that alone is enough to spell doom for the project, right? Because this is not the first time the audience have cried wolf and have been mad at casting choice, creative direction, and everything that happens before a movie hits the cinema. And some movies do amazingly well despite all of that, and it's a normal experience. And I think this is where Supergirl most likely had the highest chance of doing well. That irrespective of everything that has been said before the release, the final product itself would save the project. Unfortunately, the viewing experience of the audience and their own testimony of it just plunged the movie even deeper into the abyss. Now, almost everyone agrees James Gunn understands spectacle, the visual, cinematography, the action. These aren't usually where it struggles. Nobody would ever come and say James Gunn cannot pull out an amazing action movie, an amazing superhero movie. He has done before in the past, while in Marvel's, now in DC. But many audience members left saying something else concerning this movie. Some felt the villain lacked impact. And I can understand why, because when you look at his Superman project and we have the villain, amazing. The monkeys, every single element that makes the ecosystem of the villain in Superman was just, every single actor, amazing. But this lacked that. Many said the villain wasn't okay. Many felt also that the emotional journey wasn't fully developed. And I can also understand why we have not experienced a major Supergirl movie. We've had some in the past and they didn't do well. I think so, but we've not had anyone outside of series, many of these series that they release. And so a lot of people expected a lot. The question is, why did James Gunn decide to go with that? Why did James Gunn choose to experiment with Supergirl? Why did James Gunn decide to go with that? And so if you would be introducing a new character, an assumption would be that such character would be very captivating. But that is, by the way, that is my own personal point of view. I'm talking about what people said about me after seeing the movie. They said they didn't like it, and word of mouth has always been stronger than advertising. Marketing departments hate hearing that, but it's the facts. Reviews matter. People often say critics don't matter anymore. I partly agree. Critics alone really decide success. We've seen films receive terrible critics scores while the audience loved them. And those films still made hundreds of millions. But Supergirl faced something different. The critics weren't particularly enthusiastic. The audience wasn't overwhelmingly enthusiastic either. Both the critics score on Rotten Tomatoes and the critics score, both critics score on Rotten Tomato and audience score on Rotten Tomato were very, very low. Both groups were telling the same story in such a way that every single thing, most of the elements discussed about, most of the elements many individuals thought the film would flop at, those were no longer the talking points. They were no longer the talking points. It was an amazing movie in action, color, and everything, but the storyline was poor, the emotional anchoring poor, the character writing poor. People could not relate. And so there we go. We have the perception before the movie came out and the perception after the movie came out, both very, very poor. And then that's where we have it. The fall or the failure as seen in Supergirl. So what's the branding lesson? Number one, of course, by now you should know, if you don't know, that a brand isn't your logo, it is not your slogan. Your brand isn't certainly your mission statement that nobody outside HR would even remember or care to even want to learn. Your brand is a marriage between how you see yourself and, most importantly, how your audience sees you. Those two realities have to meet somewhere. Because if primarily your audience doesn't believe your story, then your story stops being your brand. That's just the fact. And many big brands, small brands, organizations, personal brands often tend to forget it. If you say you are rich, you claim you're rich, and that is the leverage as a personal brand you want to use to appeal to your own target audience, and your target audience looks at you for a second and then just decides, no, you're not rich. There is nothing you can do. You cannot force the perception of yourself down their throat. Many have tried with billions of dollars, and this is the result here. Supergirl flopping. So your story stops being your brand once the perception of it by your audience is opposite of it, the story. It sounds harsh because it is, but the market is wonderfully democratic. The people who vote with their wallet do not care. They are paying for it. People are paying top dollar to go to the cinema, so they have all the right to perceive your brand the way they want to, as it were. So they will vote on what the Supergirl movie is, and they voted poor, and so therefore it's poor, and so the word of mouth passed on up to the point where most people just decided, no, there's no need watching the movie. That is the power of perception. The audience is powerful. Businesses often believe they control the narrative, which is a big issue with big brands. Big brands often believe they control the narrative. You don't control the narrative. You might try to, and buy a section of the market, use influencers and dress, which is why sometimes it looks like they do, but it only works when the foundation is so strong. If customers genuinely love your product, or a large portion of customers genuinely love your products, negative narratives struggle to survive. In fact, negative narratives can be the springboard upon which your brand would launch into the next level. If the foundation is weak, even small criticism would crumble that entire brand at a very frightening speed. And that is why branding at its core isn't manipulation, it is trust. And trust is built slowly but lost very, very quickly. And it is usually lost over something executive dismissed 6 months earlier, or perhaps even years, as just social media noise. You cannot dismiss what people are saying online. Careers have been made by virtue of people saying one thing about somebody online. Mega stars have been born online from social media conversations. Twitter has cancelled more people than any other social media handle. And so to assume that people are having this discussion, to assume that these nerds like myself are speaking on Reddit and we do not matter, will be the downfall of any brand. So this isn't just about Supergirl, of course. You've seen similar conversations around The Flash. Nothing could be done to save the movie. Disney's live action Snow White also fell into that trouble. and countless other major releases. Each situation was different. Each had different strengths, different weaknesses, different criticisms, but they all demonstrate one principle: the audience perception becomes part of the product. Simple. The audience perception becomes part of the product. The audience perception is stronger than the logo, than whatever slogan, than the product itself. Yes, you'll be shocked to find out that a movie that should not do well will just find its way into the heart of the audience, and it does well. Why? Because they just love maybe a quirky actor, yeah, or maybe the message it passes. A vivid example of that is, I think, the vigilante. Also, I can't remember the movie. One that is divided Europe right now. Currently banned, the Citizen Vigilante. I think so. Currently banned in Germany. So I saw that movie, and it didn't go down well with me. Of course, why should it? But a host of people found the movie quite interesting, and they are gravitating towards it because it speaks to a current situation. That's my perception. Of course, does not override those individuals' perception. It exists in the cloud, and I respect it. I respect all points of views reasonably, especially when it comes to life and death and so many issues. But the point is this: whether you are building a business, whether you're building your personal brand, whether you're looking to launch a product, whether you're looking to be the next big thing, how the audience perceives you goes further in establishing your position in the market. It establishes whether your product or your idea will be a commercial success. It establishes whether it will just be one of those things that just swept into the bin. It establishes whether it will be classic. It establishes a whole lot of things, and so you must pay attention to it. Could Warner Bros. Do things differently at every single instance? Yes, they could have. I think one key thing they could have done is conversation. I do not believe a brand is a rock or is something that is stuck in a box that can never be undone. I believe a brand, especially at the beginning stage, is more or less like a stream, and it can be directed based on how the owner of the brand interacts with the audience. The point being is, by use of conversation, there was every ample opportunity for James Gunn and Warner Bros. To have conversation with the audience, but they chose not to. You cannot go far right or far left. There is always the middle ground. Conversation was important. Acknowledging what the audience is saying is also important. All of this could have been put into consideration. Appealing to the fans also would have happened, and it would have saved the movie at any given instance. See, a movie can have multiple characters representing multiple things. Yes, and each person would stick to whatever character they choose, they feel more true to. And could this have been done? Yes, but that apart, the movie itself, I think it was rushed. I think it's what I believe. I think it was supposed to be a cheap score. I believe James Gunn probably saw it as a cheap score, something that could be quickly put up to score some point, but it did underwhelmingly. So, point is this: perception matters in your brand. Perception matters. So, it's the end of the podcast, episode 2. If you're not subscribed yet, kindly subscribe. I am on a race to 20 podcasts before the end of the month of July, and I will get there, but it would make more sense if we get there together. So subscribe to my YouTube channel. The podcast Brands and Growth with Covy is hosted majorly on YouTube for now. In the future, we would expand to Spotify, but want to get a foothold there. So kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel. Watch my other videos. I'm Atiwene Wilson. I'm the founder of Covy, a media company and a brand company, and we work with businesses and individuals to build their personal brand through media, social media specifically, and all its apparatus, podcasts, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, the whole 9 yards. We build these brands up and help them convert or achieve whatever it is they want to achieve. We are open to working with you. We want to work with you. So you can contact us through any of the links on our profile, description of this video. Everywhere, it's everywhere. So see you in the next episode. Bye.